These are the differences I noticed between the 1989 book and the 2025 graphic novel of Babysitter's Club, Jessi Ramsey, Pet Sitter. Jessi wears glasses in the graphic novel, only in the first chapter though. Jessi does not mention that her real name is Jessica. In the book, Jessi interrupts chapter 1 with an 8-page lecture on every member of the Babysitter's Club. Thankfully, the graphic novel removes this. While Jessi still mentions it was hard for her to make friends when she first moved to Stony Brook, she no longer says it was hard because they're the only black family in town. Becca says she wants to have a white cat and name it Misty. Jessi remembers this later on when wondering what to name the hamster. Those scenes are not in the book. Jessi and Becca talk about Jessi having the next week off. In the book, that part was narration. Claudia gives out snacks at the meeting. This was moved from the middle of the chapter to the start of the chapter. Jessi talks to Mallory when she arrives. In the book, she talks to Kristy. Kristy is noticeably less angry and bossy during the first club meeting. For example, she doesn't interrupt Claudia. Claudia doesn't do a high squeaky voice as a joke. The graphic novel greatly reduces Jessi's 6-page lecture on what the various club members do. Marianne mentions sitting dogs in book 1. In the book, Kristy tells that story, and she tells it in far more detail. Jessi volunteers to watch the Mancusi pets right away. In the book, she explains that she's free next week before volunteering. Chapter 2 ends with Jessi calling Mrs. Mancusi. In the book, the conversation is longer, and it's followed by Kristy listing all of the Mancusi pets. Jessi doesn't brag that she's a great speller. She knows how to spell cacophony. Jessi and Mrs. Mancusi say, "Oh, it's you," at the same time. In the book, Jessi says, "Oh, the dog walker." Jessi and Mrs. Mancusi make small talk when introducing themselves to each other. Unlike the book, Mrs. Mancusi doesn't talk about having pets instead of kids. Jessi doesn't talk about her family members, or the fact that nobody in the neighborhood was willing to talk to her family when they first moved in. The dogs are introduced before Mr. Mancusi. In general, the book gives 1 to 3 paragraphs of description for every pet. The graphic novel reduces this quite a bit. For example, the dogs are introduced as a group instead of each dog getting a separate introduction. Mr. Mancusi is given the first name George. Pooh Bear's description is changed from devilish to feisty. They don't mention that Jacques is a year old. Powder is not a kitten. It's not mentioned that Rosie is Powder's mom. Crosby is no longer an orange tiger cat. Ling Ling, the Siamese cat, was replaced with a cat named Sebastian. The Mancusis don't explain that some birds can talk, nor do they explain how to take care of the birds. The graphic novel does not explicitly state the guinea pig names are a reference to I Love Lucy. The animals are introduced in a different order. Instead of hamsters, guinea pigs, turtles, snake, fish, and rabbits, we get guinea pigs, rabbits, hamsters, turtles, fish, and snake. The graphic novel plays up Jessi's fear of snakes. The Mancusis say Jessi can invite her friends over to help. She does that about 10 times in both versions, so it's nice she actually gets permission to do it in the graphic novel. Chapter 3 ends with Jessi getting advance pay and saying goodbye to the Mancusis. That scene was made up for the graphic novel. In the book, Chapter 3 ends with 2 pages of Jessi pet sitting for the first time. The graphic novel moves this to the start of Chapter 4, and it makes the section much longer. There is a running joke that the cats are loud when they get fed. That's not in the book. Instead, the book has Jessi play with the cats and the other animals. Come to think of it, it's weird. They removed the scenes of Jessi playing with the animals. Jessi starts pet sitting on Friday. In the book, she starts on Saturday. Jessi doesn't make a big deal out of the fact that one hamster is by itself. They remove Claudia's club notebook entry and the first 3 pages of her babysitting job. Jamie and Nina play with different animals. Frank is never in a cage. In the book, he's always in his cage. The kids are confused when Frank says, "Where's the beef?" In the book, Frank says, "2 mints in 1," and Jamie tries to teach Frank how to sing Miss Mary Mac. Chewbacca the dog is brown, like Chewbacca the Wookiee. In the book, he is a black Labrador retriever. The girls are careful to keep Chewie out of the street, because that's dangerous. In the book, it's more like the opposite. They try to shoo him away. Claudia checks to see if Chewy's owners are home. Jessi does that in the book. They remove the scene where the babysitters try to get Chewy to follow them so they can lead him back home, but he's too smart to fall for that trick. The babysitters notice a chipmunk. In the book, Nina notices the chipmunk. Jamie plays with a leaf for 2 panels. I don't know why. The graphic novel has a brief scene where Chewy's owners come back and get him. Like the other graphic novels, Kristy's club president uniform is changed from a visor to a baseball cap. Claudia reads a Nancy Drew book. For legal reasons, they can't show the cover of a real Nancy Drew book. She's reading a book with a generic cover vaguely based on book 2, instead of specifically reading book 30. When Dawn collects dues, everyone groans and then they all laugh. They don't laugh in the book. I think it makes sense if they don't laugh, because later on, Dawn complains. She feels legitimately bad when people are groaning over the dues. There's a noticeable effort to avoid using the word bossy. Either they remove it outright, or they change it to different words like pushy or gives orders. Claudia talks about when girls besides Kristy had good ideas. She mentions Stacy's idea, Marianne's idea from book 1, Marianne's idea from book 4. In the book, she only mentions Marianne's idea from graphic novel 13. They remove Kristy saying, "Trust me, we don't. All you guys need to do is calm down, and you'll see that things are actually in control." Kristy paused. When none of us said anything, she went on. In the book, the club fight is interrupted by several phone calls. In the graphic novel, it's one continuous conversation. Dawn complains about half as much about checking the club notebook. Marianne doesn't ask why Kristy can't just trust them to read the notebook. Claudia complains about half as much about getting phone calls at all hours. In the book, she specifically mentions Mrs. Barrett, who never bothers to call at the right time. One time she called very early on a Saturday morning and woke Claudia up, and it's just not a good situation. Jessi tells Mallory that Kristy likes being club president. In the book, she thinks this to herself, and she does that earlier in the chapter. I think they changed Charlie's car. That is way too nice looking to be the junk bucket. Maybe that's why Charlie's so mad in this book. He lost his car. They removed the first part of chapter 6, where Marianne calls and asks to bring the kids over. Jessi doesn't show the hamsters to the Perkins girls. Jessi jumps on a bucket instead of a chair. The kids don't point out that snakes can climb chairs, so hiding on a chair to avoid a snake will not work. The snake escapes when Marianne looks somewhere else for a few seconds. In the book, the snake escapes when she's distracted and briefly leaves the room. The 4 girls do not split up to search every room of the house. They don't search the house for 20 minutes. Frank talks at the end of the chapter. This replaces a moment in the middle of the chapter where Frank joins in on their conversation. In chapter 7, Claudia is wearing a bow. In the book, her special outfit is totally different. Kristy does not complain about how long it took for her to make the checklist. Mimi appears in person to ask if everything's okay. In the book, she calls from upstairs, and Claudia shouts yes at her. Dawn insists on the new elections. They remove the scene where Kristy says, "A motion was made for elections, and she'll consider the idea," which causes the others to demand new elections. Mallory and Jessi spend far less time stammering because they don't know how to respond to the election news. They remove Jessi and Mallory talking outside of the house after the meeting. They skip the first page of chapter 8, where it's explained why Becca and Mallory are at the Mancusi's with Jessi. Frank says, "Unlimited texting with no data cap." In the book, he says, "Call long distance." Mallory is there for all of chapter 8. In the book, she arrives after the parrot scene, which leads to a second scene where they ask the parrot to say something. Jessi vocalizes the thought that they might be forced to quit the club. Jessi asks how they should vote, then responds to her own question. In the book, Mallory is the one who asks the question. Jessi doesn't recap what the 4 club offices are, nor does she point out that Kristy will always think of the club as hers. They change the word fat to big every time that it appears. They remove Jessi's joke that maybe the hamster is too fat to move. The chapter ends with Jessi and Becca playing cats together. In the book, they say goodbye to the various animals, and Frank references a Lipton tea commercial. In the book, Kristy babysits Jackie in Chapter 9. That causes her to realize she's too bossy. The graphic novel greatly reduces this chapter to a 2-page recap, and it happens 4 chapters later. The election storyline is somewhat different when Kristy does not learn her lesson about bossiness about halfway through the book. As part of delaying Kristy's story, they include a panel where Dawn asks if Kristy is done writing in the club notebook, and Kristy says she's not. Jessi and Mallory talk when going to the meeting. In the book, this conversation is a phone call. Claudia does not pass around a bag of popcorn and a bag of Doritos. Kristy tries to explain her voting plan. The girls immediately interrupt her and start complaining. In the book, they let Kristy explain her plan in great detail before complaining. Kristy uses Claudia's broken leg as an example of her thinking about other people. This is replaced with Dawn complaining about the notebook checklists. Most of Jessi's narration at the start of Chapter 11 is changed to her conversation with her mom. They remove the scene where Jessi calls Mallory's house. She talks to Claire for a bit, and then she talks to Mallory. They remove the scene where Jessi feeds the cats, and while she does so, she goes through every single club office one by one, figuring who's the best person for that job. Jessi does not panic over the fact that she didn't notice the hamster's issues earlier. They cut out Jessi getting a shoebox for the hamster, getting the hamster inside the shoebox, and then showing the hamster to her mom. They just skip straight to being at the vet. The guy with the snake does not talk to the Ramseys. Jessi uses her mom's phone to call Kristy, and she says she can't make the elections. In the book, she uses a pay phone, and that call takes place slightly later on, while the vet is examining the hamster. The vet tells Jessi the hamster is pregnant. In the book, Jessi's mom is the one who says the hamster is pregnant. The vet gives more instructions on how to handle a pregnant hamster. Jessi doesn't say Suzanne is a dumb name for a hamster, nor does she say Chipper is a boy's name. Mallory's dramatic noise is dun dun dun. In the book, it's dum da dum dum. Claudia made a ballot box. Kristy does not say she made extra ballots in case of any mistakes. The ballots have all 4 jobs on them. In the book, there is a separate ballot for each job. Kristy reads the votes out loud. In the book, she reads the votes to herself before revealing the results. Jessi no longer gives the moral that elections should be about picking the person who's best for the job, instead of voting based on other people's thoughts and feelings. Jessi doesn't raise her hand and explain her reasoning for why each person is the best choice for her particular job. The girls have a big group hug. The book says the meeting ends happily, but it doesn't say there's a hug. The graphic novel moves the pregnant hamster from the kitchen to the office. When Kristy jokes the snake is loose, Marianne cries, "What?" before realizing it's a joke. In the book, Marianne screams and starts trying to run away, forcing Kristy to explain, No, I was just joking. Mr. Mancusi tells Jessi the hamster had 10 babies, not 5. In the book, Jessi already knew the number of hamster babies. Jessi is paid at the end of the conversation instead of in the middle. She no longer comments that this is her largest paycheck ever. They remove Jessi talking to everybody when she arrives at the last club meeting. Dawn is stuck under Claudia's bed. In the book, Claudia, Dawn, and Jessi all look under the bed, but they don't get stuck, which is followed by Kristy and Dawn making jokes about her backside. Kristy doesn't hang up the checklist before she rips it up. Marianne and Claudia worry they haven't done the club's opening business. In the book, Kristy worries about this. They remove the scene where Jackie calls to tell Kristy that he lost the class election. Kristy talks to Jackie's mom and asks if they would like a pet hamster. That's about 110 changes made to the book. It's about the same as graphic novel 16 by the same adapter. Kristy is less bossy, in part because they avoid using the word bossy. Kristy learning her lesson is moved to the end of the book. In many places, Jessi's narration is changed into dialogue, and she spends less time thinking over who is best for each role. Transitional scenes were mostly removed. There is less pet stuff, but still enough pet stuff to justify the title. Thank you for watching this long video. Bye.